Because
The
the
recording
recording is
started.
started. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll
Okay.
send it to you then. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. Doc, thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation. As you know, I'm launching my book, Financial Confidence for Her Well-Being. It is a book that is targeted or aimed at helping female leaders. And it's the penning of this book has been inspired by 17 years plus of coaching leaders in organizations, but particularly female leaders, and noticing a pattern where two elements of life for most female leaders get neglected for the majority of women, that is their finances. And then because they neglect their finances, they end up feeling the pressure financially, which also then leads them to working even harder, which has an impact on their physical and health, right? And then it becomes kind of a vicious cycle. You're working harder to hopefully to get to get more finances or get the next promotion so that you can alleviate or improve your financial situation. Your health suffers, and your finances suffer. You're overworking and overfunctioning, so you actually end up not even getting the promotion to improve your financial situation. So most female leaders, you look at them, they are successful professionally, but when it comes to their finances, many conversations pointed to the fact that, there was still a lot of work that we need to do as female leaders around our finances. But of course, it's contextual. And the reason it's contextual is we know that historically, women only managed to start, operating as independent financial beings in the 70s. To start opening your own bank account, you needed your husband to go to the bank, and so on. So while we have transformed and moved on in terms of the economic access for women, I'm not so sure that we are there yet in terms of the conditioning that needs to occur for us to be economically emancipated fully. Okay, so I have a few questions to ask you around conditioning, right? Around conditioning, the things that we grow up seeing that shape our financial mindset. And my first question for you is, what messages did you absorb about women and money growing up as a male figure?
Yeah, sure. This is such an important topic or subject that you are dealing with, Doc, here. And if I just cast my eyes back at my younger self, my mom and my dad, what I remember is that my dad obviously would be the working guy, right? But what because we were rural based, so I mean I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in the a Lalin out there in the rural
In
areas.
the village. Yeah.
Yeah, what was fascinating for me was even my dad in terms of who keeps the money. In fact, I grew up, we were told that you first, when you get it, you bring it home and you give it to your mom or to your granny to keep for you.
Okay.
So the women, in terms of being a bank, were the bank. Would they then use the money on their own? I don't know because we're not involved in the decision. But one thing I grew up knowing is that your money goes to your mom or to your granny to keep for you. In fact, when I started working, I may not have given my mom all the money, but I did give her some of my money. I mean, you are talking about the graduates because that was ingrained in us that part of the money you don't just keep or keep in the bank. So when I started working as a temporary teacher, I did give my mom some out of my pay to keep for me. And the idea there, if you think about it, is that as a young man, you're supposed to earn, make sure you keep the money because ultimately is you want to pay lobola, right?
Yeah.
The family is not going to pay everything for you.
Yeah.
You must also be seen to be contributing towards that. And during our time is cows. You have to buy a head of cattle to go and do the stuff. It wasn't just money. Now I know it's money only that is being paid as part. So part of giving the money to your part of your salary to your elders is, or your mom or your grandma, is precisely that. Even my father would give the money here because I don't know, as I say, I don't know how much he would give and what the discussions would be when he wanted to use that money. But that's what I grew up knowing, that if you want the money to be safe,
Yeah.
you have to give it to the women.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So we are safe keepers of the money. We are not the
Yes.
earners. We are not the ones buying the assets, but we can keep the money. So that we are
Yes.
good at. We can keep the money and ensure that it is
Yes.
used for the reasons or purposes that are important, like Lobola. So thank you for sharing that. So yes, I do resonate with that. I can remember that, money was given to the woman to safekeep it. But to your point, whether they would use it for their needs, that's something else. So they could have it, but in terms of using it for their needs, that's something else. Okay. What do you think is the financial script we need to unlearn, or women need to unlearn? What is the financial script women need to unlearn?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is this permission, one, to have the money to make. I mean, these days, when I talk to people, you almost get the sense that women should not be earning these big bucks that they earn. It's like if they do, there's something they are not good enough. They are not to be, almost not to be trusted, because how can you trust a woman who can, because now they are not dependent on any man. I think that's a
Yeah.
problem. But I
Yeah.
think they should give, it is that script. It's not just the women, it's also the men that must
Okay.
unlearn that.
Yeah.
And part of it is this, the men will provide. And therefore, I think there's a sense of feeling guilty. In fact, there is. I mean, I have friends who are female who are doing very well. And there is that sense, that guilt thing when they can afford things.
Yeah.
Like there's this jocularly, people would say, if they invite you for coffee or lunch, they would say, "Don't be the African man on me now. I'm going to take this." You know, then that tells you that it's almost sheepishly saying, "I can do this today.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
it some other time."
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not just women; it's also us as men unlearning some of the scripts that we've grown
Right.
up. Just treating it, because it brings about this, this equality.
Yeah.
That's when you practice it. You shouldn't feel offended as a man. I shouldn't be feeling offended. Nor does the lady feel that she needs permission to do
Yeah.
what she can do with the money. So it's that script must be like sort of torn up and thrown away.
Thank you for that.
Don't,
The permission one is a big one. The permission one, and the
yeah,
guilty, feeling guilty that you're earning more than your counterpart or your spouse or your partner. So that is something that we need to unlearn as women. So
yeah,
thank you for naming that we don't need to constantly be seeking for approval. I remember a story, a female colleague, the husband didn't have money. They went to dinner with friends, and she put money under the table to pass it to the husband because it just felt
yeah,
inappropriate for her to be paying. So she had to pass the money under the table so that the husband could be seen as paying. And to your
yeah,
point, we all need to unlearn. Why are we saying the man is the provider? If you can do it, you can do it. And there's different ways of having conversations around finances that are both empowering for the two people in a relationship. What happens socially when a woman becomes financially powerful? And I think you touched on it a little bit. When a woman becomes financially powerful, what happens socially?
you. I think well, here's what I've observed,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've observed that society, and I'm including myself, we don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to deal with that powerful
Yeah.
woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it goes against the grain, it goes against what we have known, what
Mm-hmm.
we've been, sort of what we're acquainted with.
Yeah.
It goes against it. And I think it also puts them in a predicament of, now, how do I show up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can, am I allowed to even show up with the fact that I have this? And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, it almost changes who the person is,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't get accepted But which is actually quite funny, because if I just again cast my eyes back to the community, the village, the gogos who could make the traditional beer and that man would come and buy.
Yeah.
Even in terms of, let's just talk about money, because even then, if you don't have money, you'll be bringing maybe a pot of maize,
Yeah.
to get your piece of your calabash of the beer, the traditional beer. You will leave something. You don't just gonna get for free. And that woman is powerful in that community, because and is accepted as such. I think Doc, there's been, I think, the transition from what we were in terms of the agrarian kind of life that we had, and transitioning into the cities has changed quite a number of things. Because I don't know, maybe I was too young. I don't remember people frowning against the gogo or the mother who was known to be making great beer. Who would flock there, on a Saturday afternoon. I don't remember that person being disparaged. There was respect. But I think the thing has flipped now. In the Western culture in which we now live in, when a woman is making it, what's the difference between this urban woman and that woman who used to, at the end of the day, count how many bowls of maize, millions do I have here, or money, pounds that I have, rands of pounds that I have here. What's the difference? I don't know. I think something has flipped.
Yeah. But do you think the gogos would then hand over the monies? Was that not part of the arrangement?
Yeah, I actually don't know. That's the part. Our parents and our grandparents were so secretive. That part, I don't know. But I mean, I remember my grandma, my granddad was long gone by then. But when I was going, because I went for the last 2 years of school, I went to boarding school, and I needed to buy a trunk. You remember those trunks?
Yes, the trunks, the tin ones, the metal ones, yeah? Yes,
the tin ones. Yeah. So my mom and my grandma had money to give me, say, no, and this is my contribution towards buying. I think the trunk was 30 rand then. I don't know how much it is now. But so my mom gave me the money, but it wasn't enough. My grandma, so it means these people had money, right? And they were the bank. And in fact, I don't know whether you've seen this. Your grandma or your mom would have a string, a knot like this that they would put around their waist.
On their
and
waist
that was the bank.
That
was the bank.
Yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm sure we could go on and on, but I think we have just touched on the things that we can continue to explore over time in terms of how we reacting, how we are building our financial identity, both as males and women. I know that I bring the issue of women for a particular reason, but it is a conversation that women cannot have alone. It's a conversation that women, men also need to be part of, but really focusing on how are we as women engaging with money, and how do we need to evolve so that we can be economically emancipated, but also build things like ownership around, assets, and be comfortable in our skin when we have the money, instead of constantly be seeking for permission. So thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doc.